to be appointed, and as far as I know, he's been a good member of the IDA. I'm sorry? I don't know the rest of them. Oh, yeah. So
now that expires. That expires in November. That's November 19th. Just to make sure, I mean, Mr. Stoddard, who's the Port Royal one, has said he's willing to serve too.
Well, I just
and Mr. Ratcliffe has said he's willing to serve too. So I'm going to ask Mr. Wilson if you could touch base with Mr. Ratcliffe, even though he said he wanted to serve. Just touch base with him again, and Mr. Taylor will touch base with them, and we will do this appointment in October. Okay, so that takes care of the appointments. Consent agenda, we have pulled agenda item D, which we'll probably have time to get back to, but we pulled D. Anything else board members would like have pulled from the consent agenda for further discussion? Motion to approve the consent agenda A through C, E through H would be in order.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Black. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Since we're doing very well, we're going to move 14A, which was actually a consent agenda D, back up to here. Mr. Black, would you like to give the overview, or would you like to ask Chief Loftus to do it?
I'll start, and then if you don't mind, Chief Loftus can come. I got a phone call last night from the Ladysmith volunteer fire chief, and I was also got a copy of an email here sent to the fire department from Mr. Kevin Whiteman. And I'll just go ahead and read it. It says, after concluding an inspection of the second floor sleeping quarters and recreation room, I'm declaring the second floor of the structure unsuitable and unsafe for occupancy and or storage. The floor joists supporting half of the second floor recreation room and kitchen area are overspanned by 2 feet and have noticeable defection. Additionally, the plywood subfloor has laminated in numerous locations, causing soft spots throughout the structure. In the sleeping quarters, the carpet is the only thing preventing anyone from falling through the floor in 2 locations. It appears to me that the subfloor used was not tongue and groove, which is exacerbating the problem. In order to reoccupy the second floor, I will need a detailed plan on the abating the code violations and a building permit issued with inspections by my office. So obviously, my concern, Mr. Chairman, is the fact that, I mean, we have money here that's being allocated, surplus funds, and I just talked to Mr. Akers about this as well. In my opinion, this should become fixing this should become a top priority if we've got, fire personnel that can't stay overnight at the station.
Yes, and the chief just spoke to me while we were having dinner about his plan. Chief, if you'd like to come forward, please, because I know there are some. You were one of the departments who did a great job last year with your budget, and you came well within your budget, and subsequently the board allowed you to reuse those funds for capital purchases, which you've identified already. But I think you have some more things that could help us find funding for that building. And
yeah, I mean, you have some things before you in the capital plan. The issue right now is we don't know how much those repairs are going to cost, and they need to be done. I agree, but moving forward without that information, I'm not sure we can do that yet. So we do have an engineer that's coming to look at the property, hopefully on Monday, to provide the plan that Kevin needs to approve to move forward. And at that point, we'll have some general cost estimates of what that's going to be. Either way, I think it's going to be some degree of a cost share between us and Ladysmith Fire Department. We don't own that property. We've already invested $30,000 into the property in 2010 for some flooring work. I would imagine this will be in the $30,000 repair range. I'm just estimating that, give or take. Certainly better numbers give you better information. But my concern as we move forward with not only this station, but any stations that we don't own as we continue to put money in them, something like frog level rescue, we put about $30,000 into a new roof and reswaling the parking lot, that the county should have some degree of stake in the property. So as we move forward with this project, I think we need to look at what that arrangement would be in case something like frog level happens, the department goes under, the county can never get its money back out of that property, and it becomes unusable to us. So I think we need to wait for the data to come in and see how much that cost is going to be. I agree with you, we do need to fix it. I would like to move forward with a definitive plan, though, because this will set a precedent down the road as we look at repairs to the fire stations. Right now in your capital plan, you've got millions worth of repairs to fire stations. Bowling Green being right behind that with some issues in their station. I'm sure if we brought Kevin over there tomorrow, we may not like the outcome. So those are all in the budget to be funded. We haven't really looked at doing large station repairs unless they're an emergency repair that they come to the board with, and then we do a reaction to that. If you recall, we put $30,000 in Sparta for flood damage several years ago. So we do that, but generally it's been done with an appropriation from the board. So I know you do have some capital money on the table. That's your discretion whether to spend it there. I would urge you that everything we ask for in that capital plan is things that were not funded in fiscal year 14's budget. There are things, in my opinion, we need. There are other priorities in the department. So based on the allocation of money, those were the best things we could choose for that amount of funds. So it's up to the board if you want to hold off on that allocation to see where these repair costs are going to be and use those funds to fix that.
That's probably a discussion for the board. There's some other steps we need to take, but let's get by the first one. So how does the board feel about it? Let this appropriation go through for the equipment he's already asked for, and while he does that, we meet again in 2 weeks. You're going to have somebody here next week. So we hope to have some kind of numbers when we meet again. What's really critical that you have to have right now?
The number one thing right there, we need the appropriation for the ambulance, the $30,000 to match the grant money that we've received. We received $126,000 grant. We need that for our local match. So that's number one that has to be funded. The reason it's coming up now is we never allocated any money to fund that 20%. For me, the other issue is the vehicles. We haven't purchased any new fleet vehicles in about 7 years, and we're replacing vehicles that need to be replaced a long time ago and pushed out. I could probably, the t-shirts and the uniforms for the volunteers could come off, as well as the equipment for the vehicles could come off, and we'll try to find alternate funds to pay for the equipment for the vehicles.
How does the board wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, I would certainly like to see us hold off on any expenses other than the $32,000 that's needed for the ambulance until after the meeting on the 8th. And then all this will be brought back on the 8th, and then we determine what it's going to take to do the improvements over at Ladysmith. I'm not saying they don't need to, some of these things don't need to be done, but I just think that we have to set our priorities. And I personally think, since it's my understanding that these volunteers, as well as career people, that stay at the station have been told you cannot go back to the upstairs where the sleeping quarters are and where they basically wait for calls. So I think that is certainly a priority that needs to be addressed. And so I would like to see us wait until the 8th and look and see what those costs are going to be, and then move forward after that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll have to agree with Mr. Akers, and the other is I would like to hear what the plan would be for, is there going to be a cost share between the county and Ladysmith Fire? I mean, what is an equitable distribution of those costs, and what share, because we need to get this done as quickly as possible. If they have funds, we have funds, what's that cost sharing going to be? What's the formula going to be? Because I do agree that in the future it's going to have an impact, particularly when we have done work on other stations. But I would absolutely agree. Let's go with the ambulance cost, the $32,000, because that's critical, and come back on the 8th with a cost share sort of agreement, and then look at what the cost is going to be and move from there.
And Mr. Chairman, I would also say to the Chief and to Ladysmith Fire Department, we do need to put in place a mechanism that would, if we're going to invest $30,000 in the various facilities, then the county certainly has to have a way of getting that money back or being able to use those facilities for the purpose in which they were intended, which is a fire and rescue.
Yeah, as it stands right now, they're a private incorporated
I
business.
understand. I understand.
My concern is that, not that anything will change in the future, but it could. And Frog Level Rescue is an example of that, and we want to make sure we're getting value for the taxpayer's dollar. I would mention to the chair, if it would benefit the board for quicker education purposes, to put a board member on this little group as we sit down with Lady Smith, myself, probably Mr. Coley, and talk through the options, probably Kevin Whiteman, to find cost-effective options. I put that out there if a board member would like to do that.
Okay, there's probably 2 or 3 that could be choices that are volunteer.
It might expedite information coming back to you, is my point.
Mr. Chairman, I'll volunteer.
Mr. Black will be on that committee. Mr. Underwood?
I'm going to take a little different approach than my 2 colleagues. We are telling the chief and the other fire, his department, that if you save this money, then we're going to make sure that you're able to spend it, since it did come out of last year's funds. So I think now, I agree we need a mechanism to fix the department, to fix the facility. But on one hand, we're penalizing him for doing a good job. That's what we ask you to do. You have a need for vehicles and some other things, and I could see maybe one of the items could wait, but certainly the other items that you need, I think, are important. And so we're saying, well, you saved it, and we said that we would give it to you, but now we're going to reprioritize things. So I think we're sending a mixed message to people, and I think we should honor our word, and we should come up with a plan and allow the chief to buy the things that he says he needs to buy for his departments.
Can I ask the chief a question?
Yeah, 1 second, because if this is September, if the chief had been here July 1st,
Right.
he would have gotten all this stuff, probably paid for it already, and then we'd be sitting here saying, okay, we need $30,000 or more to fix a building. But Mr. Underwood is right. We made a deal. The deal is, if you can work your budget so that you save money, we're going to give you that money back for capital purchases, which is a win-win. We don't have to spend that money for things. You've saved it. So we don't want to say you saved it and now give it back to us for something else that you have no control over. And that's kind of where we have to work out what's right. But Mr. Akers, you want to ask the chief a question?
Please. The money that was saved by your department, was that all of the fire and rescue emergency services budget?
That's the entire budget, yes, sir.
Okay. So the volunteers are part of that budget, is that correct?
Most definitely.
Okay, so volunteers save money as well, so it's not like it's coming from his individual budget. Well, it is in the sense, but not from his department, because the volunteers were just cutting costs and doing what they could to save money as well. So the volunteers need some help now, and I just think we need to make sure that they get the help they need, and if it means setting prior to and waiting until the 8th, and I think...
Yeah, we're all saying we want to help.
Yeah.
I think that's the reality. We're all probably all saying that you did a great job last year, and you deserve to have that money back. So we're going to...
What I don't want to do is take it out of this year's budget.
Right.
Because I don't think that's fair to you for the budget you've done.
Nope.
Because
Right.
if you take it out, I mean, here we are in September, and let's say it's, for the sake of argument, $20,000. Then you're taking $20,000 out of your budget now that you've already got programmed in.
Right.
I understand that you've done a great job and there's prioritization of what you want to buy. I don't disagree with any of it, but it's like anything. You know, we only have 2 places to go for the money. It's either in last year's, that's because it hasn't been spent, or into the general fund cash reserve. Or I guess the third is into your budget, which I hate to do this early in the budget cycle.
I think we're going to spend the next meeting carefully considering where that funding comes. We're basically just asking at this time, Chief, if you will delay the other purchases until we kind of have an idea of what the total budget number is going to be, and hopefully we'll be able to return your good work back to you and come up with some way to pay for it together. So Was there a motion to pay for right now the ambulance that we have?
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and expend the $32,000 that's needed for the matching grant on the rescue of the ambulance.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously. Sorry, Mr. Matiak, you have to wait a little bit longer for that car, but we're going to get you one way or the other. Thank you, Chief.
That's right.
Okay. Public comments and public hearings are scheduled for 7:30. I don't really see another thing we have, so we'll take a break until 7:30, precisely 7:30, since we have about a 20-minute break. We'll be back at 7:30. We will reconvene at this time, 7:30 or as close thereof as possible. We will open the board meeting up to public comments. Public comments are not to be confused with the public hearing. So during the public comment session, you have a chance to discuss any issue you would like that is not currently a public hearing. And we have public hearings on the Town of Port Royal boundary adjustment, one public hearing on a campground that's proposed, another public hearing on a tow service operation that's proposed. Those will have individual times to talk. So if you'd like to address those, we will let you know when it's time. But at this time, any person that would like to address the board on any subject that's not a public hearing, please feel free to do so. Come forward to the podium, state your name, your voting district, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is George Bean. I'm in the Mattapanai district. I'd like to share with you that on Saturday, September 14th, the Heart of Virginia Bike Festival was held with over 500 participants and 40 volunteers. The event raised for around $10,000 for Frog Level Amateur Radio Enthusiasts, Richmond Area Bicycling Association, and their Bikes for Disadvantaged Kids program. Start-finish line was at the Hanover County Office Complex in Hanover Courthouse, but over 90 miles of the 100-mile course was within Caroline County after crossing the Mattapanai River on Route 301. In Caroline, participants went as far north and west as Route 207 and Panola Road, and as far east as Sparta. We had 3 rest stops within the county: Mount Tabor Church, Mount Vernon Church, and the community center here, where participants could replenish fluids and get some food. We had 5 amateur radio equipped vehicles assisting riders, mechanical and physical problems, 2 more supporting the rest stops, and all were managed from a telephone equipped command center in Hanover Courthouse. Upon returning to the Hanover Courthouse, participants were treated to a barbecue lunch and a jazz quintet. Heart of Virginia Bike Festival would like to thank Caroline County for its assistance and support of the event, including the obtaining of a VDOT event permit. Special thanks to Major Moser, to whom I gave the VDOT permit paperwork, expecting a signature from Sheriff Lippa, and got it back not only with the sheriff's signature, but those of the state police First Sergeant for Caroline County and Mr. Cully. He also alerted the 911 center and the duty deputies to our presence. Thanks to Chief Loftus for his input and Deputy Chief Garnett for informing the fire EMS personnel of our presence. Fortunately, their services were not needed. The only injuries that occurred could be covered with a Band-Aid. Frog Level Amateur Radio Enthusiasts' share of the proceeds from the event will be used for our ongoing efforts to develop amateur radio infrastructure in Caroline and King William counties. This includes our partnership with the Freelance Star Group to utilize their WWUZ tower on Panola Road for repeater systems that will provide disaster response emergency communications. And I'll be back in the coming months once we get the money in hand and start doing our work to update you on what we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. Is there anyone else who would like to take advantage of the public comment section? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public comment section. Board members, we will move to public hearings. As stated before, we have a public hearing first for the Port Royal boundary adjustment, the proposed campground, and then later the proposed tow service. The first one would be agenda item number 4, proposed boundary adjustment with the town of Port Royal. Understand that the town council would like to make a brief presentation first. So you can make your presentation. I will actually open the public hearing, so your presentation will be part of that. So we'll declare the public hearing for the proposed boundary adjustment Port Royal to be open. Madam Mayor, good to see you as always.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Nancy Long, Mayor of Port Royal, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to briefly summarize for citizens here tonight why the proposed adjustment to the town boundaries is both essential for Port Royal and beneficial for Caroline County. The town of Port Royal was chartered on October the 25th, 1744, 269 years ago. The town boundaries were included in the 1744 charter and have not been enlarged since. Indeed, they were reduced when the land where the River Haven restaurant now sits was transferred to Caroline County. This is in distinction to our sister town of Bowling Green, whose boundaries have been enlarged numerous times since its incorporation in 1837. The circle shows the town's approximate historic boundaries, and according to Bowling Green's website, its boundaries now include just over 1,000 acres and 110 businesses. The Port Royal area also includes a number of businesses, but nearly all the franchise and meals tax revenues, in addition to all the real estate personal property taxes, are paid to the county rather than to the town of Port Royal. This is the reason for the difference in prosperity between Bowling Green and Port Royal. And we believe that Port Royal, if it has the same opportunities as Bowling Green has had, will be equally prosperous and equally an asset to the county. Therefore, for the first time in the history of the town of Port Royal, we request that the county allows us to grow by supporting the proposed boundary line adjustment agreement. The proposed boundaries for Port Royal will include only about half the acreage of Bowling Green. The Port Royal boundary adjustment is not a gift. It is a right and a wise course of action for the town and for the county. By practicing extreme economy, but with no resources to build up a reserve fund, the town's managed to stay afloat due to the presence of a single business paying a substantial franchise tax. The Port Royal branch of the Union First Market Bank, who over the years from this single business entity paid an average of $7,000 per year to the town, this accounting for 31.2% of the town's total revenues. The bank closed in May 2012, and the revenue loss was immediately catastrophic. We appreciate the bank's donation of its land and buildings to historic Port Royal, and we are very proud of the museum that they have established, but that does not pay the bills. For comparison, the proposed boundary adjustment will result in revenues equal to 0.08% of the county's projected revenues going to the town of Port Royal. And the board, quite properly, is carefully examining the impact of this change. But you might ask yourselves, how would you manage the sudden loss of 31.2% of your revenues as Port Royal has had to do? Currently, Port Royal has very limited sources of revenue. The town cannot get a bank loan because it does not have the revenues to pay service or repay the debt. The town cannot get a grant because it does not have revenues to maintain any capital improvements funded by the grant. The town cannot obtain sufficient revenues through increased taxes on its residents because the town has a small population and most residents are already on thin ice, with 70% being low or moderate income. The town of Port Royal has managed itself for 269 years, and it's perfectly able to continue to do so. All the town needs is an adequate tax base, and that tax base can be obtained by adjusting the town's boundaries to encompass land for future growth and the businesses that have chosen to locate in the Port Royal community and have petitioned to be allowed to be part of and to contribute to that community. The town of Port Royal has never once asked the county to cover town expenses, and we're not doing that now. We are asking the county to recognize the simple fact that the town of Port Royal, like Bowling Green or any other town, cannot survive without collecting a significant portion of the tax revenue generated by its businesses, businesses that exist in large part because the town exists. The boundary line adjustment by mutual agreement between the town and the county will assure a smooth transition for all the affected population and businesses. Caroline County benefits from the boundary adjustment too. The county, the state, and the nation benefit from retaining the historic value of the town of Port Royal. Virginia receives over $21 billion per year from tourist revenues, generating over 200,000 jobs. The historic town of Port Royal helps Caroline to receive its share of these revenues and jobs. The county doesn't have to take over Port Royal's aging water system, repair its sidewalks, turn on its streetlights, maintain and insure the new fishing pier, mow the grass, or maintain the Port Royal branch of the Caroline County Library. With an assured revenue stream, the town of Port Royal is eligible, due to its small population and 70% low moderate income, to receive grant funding, many at 100%, grants that would not be available to Caroline County, thus bringing additional revenues into the town and to the county. The George Washington Regional Commission has provided guidance to the town on available grant support. The George Washington Regional Commission's Kevin Burns wrote, "I see Port Royal as a potential laboratory for historic preservation-based redevelopment and tourism, which could engage historic preservation interest and small business development assistance." The Commission added, "The boundary adjustment could be good for both sides as long as both the town council and the county board view this as a basis for continuing to work together to transform the town into a more viable economic hub in Northern Caroline, building on the location and the historic assets which the town has, and attracting support from local, regional, state, national, and private foundation sources. The entire county benefits if its northern gateway to Caroline County through Port Royal is made more attractive and inviting to new residents and businesses. If Port Royal and the surrounding areas are more attractive as places to live, new residents and new businesses will move in, real estate values will go up, both providing increased revenues to Caroline County. Finally, it is worth reminding everyone that the town of Port Royal is a part of Caroline County. Therefore, payment of Port Royal area business taxes to the town does not cost the county 1 cent. Every penny stays in Caroline County. Every penny continues to be used for the benefit of Caroline County and its people. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And at this point, the public hearing remains open. If there is anyone who would like to speak, they'll be given 3 minutes. come to the podium, state your name, your voting district, and your 3 minutes will start. Mr. Wick, if you and the Vice Mayor could slide over a little bit, just in case people want to sit there. Mr. Holloway, if you'd like to come down, so you're next in line, and anyone else who would like to come down, they could come down to the first row. 1 second, Mr. Collins. Okay.
I'm Herbert Collins. I'm in the Bowling Green District, and I want to say that Caroline County owes its very existence to the town of Port Royal. There were 4 tobacco rolling roads. 3 of those 4 wound up in Port Royal. Port Royal was a commercial center for Caroline County. Even before Bowling Green or Milford or any of those, when Port Royal was in existence, Bowling Green was a plantation, Milford was a plantation. When the courthouse was in Lower Caroline County, there was no commercial establishment there. All the commerce was at Port Royal. If we hadn't had the port of Port Royal, Caroline County wouldn't be the success that it is today. There was no western part of Caroline County, and A.P. Hill took over a lot of Caroline County that would have supported Port Royal. The Port Royal is currently a tourist attraction the same way that Williamsburg is to Virginia, Port Royal is to Caroline County. The roads from Port Royal, the King's Highway, came through Port Royal and went to the colonial capital of Williamsburg. The structures at Port Royal were studied by Colonial Williamsburg when it was founded in the 1930s there. We have a lot to offer in Port Royal. If we can keep the town as it is now and keep the historical perspective with it, we will be a tourist attraction not only for Caroline County, but for the whole state of Virginia. We've opened up a museum there, Museum of American History. We've had people come from all over the area, way away from Caroline County to see it. We've opened a portrait gallery there with the portraits of the founding fathers of Caroline County and Port Royal, and it's been a huge success. We have plans to open a transportation museum there. We have a medical museum we're going to open there. We'll be the tourist center for this whole area of Caroline County and the surrounding areas. We are envied by some of the adjacent counties that don't have as much to offer as we now do in Port Royal. I urge you to keep the town of Port Royal the way it is, the way it has been, and we have never asked for anything from the county before in the boundaries, and until the railroads came into Milford in the mid-19th century, Port Royal was a commercial center, and we have given a lot to the county. We only ask that the county give us a little recognition and change the boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Next speaker.
Yeah, my name is C.B. Holloway, and I own farmland, and it will be impacted. So far, you've drawn the line. The boundary goes through all of this 120 acres. And should I pass this?
You can pass them to Mr. Parton right there, and he'll bring those up to us.
And what I asked for basically is a modification in the boundary line adjustment to exclude the 120 acres that I own with my aunt Lucille Booker, and and her 2 sons are here tonight. We'll be talking. So basically, what I want is a limitation of the boundary line adjustment to exclude the 120 acres of farmland on map 22A4 on that. I think one of the issues is getting what you need and what you want. And I think what the town of Port Royal really needs is revenue from the residential property and business property, but I feel that farmland has no revenue benefit. There's no, I have no water, no sewer lines, and I don't use any of the town services on this thing. And I think a decision to take farmland that uses no water, no sewer, no town services, and no benefit to the town out of the county jurisdiction and place it in the town with town issues would be arbitrary and capricious and abuse of discretion. I don't think it's right. And I'll let you know that my grandfather, C.A. Holloway, was a chairman of the Board of Supervisors of this county for 42 years. And I think during that time he mentioned that someone talked about this same idea, and he said it's either a town or it's a farm, but it can never be both. And he wanted it to stay that way, and that's the way I feel too. And also he farmed this land all of his life. I asked the Board of Supervisors to send the proposed map back to planning and zoning to exclude the boundary line adjustment. Why include me in a town when I'm a farmer? I do not need the services of a town. The only need of the town is approximately $70,000 from the county and Horn's Restaurant and other businesses and residential land, but not agricultural land. The bottom line is Port Royal is just a town that is underwater and needs its payments and needs and its real needs is not farmland. And this land is a non-rooftop property with no revenue or benefit to the town.
Okay, Mr. Holloway, I'm going to ask you to summarize.
Okay, real quick. I would say the disadvantages of the farmland being in a town: agricultural land has no benefit to the town, only residential and business property has that. The town has no experience in agricultural land or farming issues. There are town ordinances that could affect the livelihood of the farm. Caroline County has farm benefits and is friendly to farms and farmers, but Port Royal has no experience. There's a likelihood of double taxation and likelihood that the town tax will be higher than the county tax. The farmland uses no water, no sewer services of the town. Don't want to pay for services you do not need. When the land is in Caroline County, the farmer can make decisions on the land. And I also wrote a letter to Mayor Long on this subject in June, and I never got a reply. And I think she misquoted what I said. I never said any of those things that she said on the meeting on August 13th, that I'm fine with it, I've changed my mind, and I think they also stated they want to have control of the decisions on the farmland, and I don't think that's correct, and I never said that, and I'll conclude, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to express all this, and I know you'll make the right decision.
Thank you, Mr. Holloway.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker.
Well, my name is William H. Booker. H stands for Holloway. CB stole my thunder because my grandfather also was chairman of the Board of Supervisors for many, many years. There was nobody more dedicated to Caroline and to the town of Port Royal than Cleveland Holloway and his wife, who owned the farm when he married her. So I have to say that I agree with both speakers tonight. I agree with what CB said, but I also agree with what Mr. Herb Collins said. I think, if that's possible, I think that I agree with CB on the boundary line agreement, but I agree that the town of Port Royal needs revenue and they need help. And whatever can be done to help the town of Port Royal needs to be done, but not by taking in farmland. It really serves no purpose as I see it right now. The only thing that's constant, I think, is change. What concerns me about the change that's about to take place is we really don't know. I had a letter from Mrs. Long in June that I think implied that no action was going to be taken on this until January of 2014. Now, maybe that's after this hearing is all settled and done, but at any rate, I suppose that since I'm more concerned about what I don't know, that I must say that I am opposed. I represent my mother in this, who was Lucille Holloway Booker, is Lucille Holloway Booker, and she owns 2/3 of that 120-acre parcel that is right at the junction of 301 and 17. So, thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Booker, you
Yes.
reside in the county now?
I do not. I do not.
Okay.
I've never resided in the county.
Okay.
I vote in the northern neck of Virginia in Richmond County.
Okay.
And I have a place in Richmond as well, but.
Okay, please don't give me your address or anything. I just wanted to make for the record.
You have my address in Richmond, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker, please come forward and state your name and your voting district. If you're in the county, you can just say, I'm not a resident of the county, if that's the case. Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me this time. My name is Derwin Booker. I'm the oldest grandson and the oldest son of Cleveland Holloway, the oldest son of Lucille Holloway Booker. I have to agree with the previous speakers, my cousin, CB, and my brother. We do not believe that agricultural land would be apropos at this time because, number one, we really, as my brother said, don't know what kind of ramifications that would have. We have no plans at this time to develop that property. The farm is currently being farmed. It has been farmed ever since my grandfather and my grandmother owned it. And we plead for you to leave that property in agricultural, and we hope that you will agree with us and revise your plan, revise the plan of Ms. Longus, and exclude the 120 acres that the Holloway and Booker family own. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? And if you'd like to speak and somebody's at the mic, feel free to come down to the front row.
I'm Jane Robinson, and I'm of the Port Royal District, voting district. In view of what you've heard from the Bookers and the Holloway and CB Holloway, there are other residents along US 17 who are property owners and residents of homes there who feel very much the same way, that they do not want their property included in the boundary adjustment. Even though all of these people feel that the town of Port Royal needs a boundary adjustment, and they very much support a boundary adjustment that would include businesses for the town so that the town will thrive with the incorporation of businesses. There are some residences that are far enough outside the town that they should not be included, and farmland, as the Bookers have, and CB Holloway has mentioned, as well as some other farmland. Therefore, I want to read to you